It's been a crazy week for me, putting all kinds of things together in the Hedera space. Still, we have an amazing show for you with an interview with ArchAx and a company of 200,000 people that's building on Hedera, and that's a brand new one. We also have a deep dive with Bonzo Finance going into their vault, an HBAR branded wine that's launching, and of course, HBAR itself is outperforming this week. So it's exciting for all HBAR Barians. Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, here once again to bring you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So as we're diving into these different stories, I think we need to change our perspective a little bit. Of course, normally we're watching from our own perspective. We're trying to get entertainment or education out of this kind of stuff. But considering I think we're going into a pretty serious alt season and it's going to be supercharged through ETFs, we have to kind of look through the lens of those new investors, the early majority, those people that would only invest through their brokerage firm, and see how the networks are going to be perceived by those people, not necessarily just ourselves, to get a feeling of how Hedera is going to do and the HBAR is going to do. Now, how the HBAR goes, Hedera is going to go in a lot of ways because that's how capital flows into our ecosystem to do all of these amazing things we cover week in and week out. Not to mention that Outperformance of the HBAR is the best form of marketing we could possibly ask for. And with that in mind, we're going to jump into the first interview I have coming out of the UK. Today, we welcome Graham. He is the CEO and the co-founder of ArchAx. Graham, thank you so much for hopping on today.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Likewise. So let's just jump right into this, Graham. You had some big news that came out this week. Can you just tell us about this latest announcement that ArchAx put out with Lloyd's and Aberdeen Investments?
Yeah, sure. As you know, we've been around since 2018 with this belief that securities and every asset is moving on chain. And at the start of our existence, we kind of believed it. Not sure everyone else did, but gradually along the way, more and more people are starting to see what we see. And we put tokenized money market funds on chain quite a long while ago, but the issue is we've been waiting for use cases. A lot of people say, well, why would I tokenize? What can I use them for? And one of the best use cases is using them as collateral, where one institution owes another institution some margin or collateral for some purpose. What can they use to transfer? And they can use money market funds. So it was always a good use case. But what makes a difference now is that we've got one of the biggest banks in the UK, Lloyd's, one of the biggest asset managers in Aberdeen, both using our money market funds as collateral. So it's really quite a big deal in the UK.
Well, I always think of Lloyd's actually as an insurance company. I worked offshore for a really long time, and we always had Lloyd's Open Forum that was for things like salvage and all that kind of stuff. But they really do have their hands in everything. And, this is a great example. So can you talk about the actual execution and how that went with these tokenized bonds and using them as collateral for FX trading and how that actually went in practice?
Yeah, I guess we've been driven by the users, to be honest. Looking for a use case for these things where both parties can, make sure they fulfill their regulatory obligations, but be innovative at the same time. So it was a matter of finding the right transaction that took place between the parties as well. And, I can't really talk about who transacts with who, but they transact with each other, and one party owes another party money. In fact, it can go either way on a daily basis. So what's a bit different about this one is rather than just having a kind of POC in a test environment, this is actually live in production with real money satisfying real margin requirements. So we were appointed as custodian and counterparty by both of the institutions so that we could facilitate movements of assets between them. And when one had a margin call, they sent the tokens to another. Now, the way that our tokenization works is that we immobilize and hold the assets, and then we create tokens backed by those assets. So we took delivery of the securities, and then we created the tokens backed by those assets.
How did Hedera perform in all of this? I know that, it's actually a small piece of this entire puzzle, but this was all done on top of Hedera. How did that go?
It went seamlessly. We already have the tokenization engine available. Actually, the product's called Nest. So we we kind of had this idea that these assets are great, but really people want to be able to use these assets more widely. They want to be able to transfer them to each other. So we kind of created a product called Nest, whereby our clients can transfer things to other ones of our clients. So over time, obviously we hope to build that with institutions so they can transact with each other. And Nest is actually built on all of the chains that we support. So any of the funds on any of the products actually on any of the chains that we support can be used for Nest. And in this instance, the institutions chose to use Hedera. And I mean, it went perfectly, right? I mean, we created the tokens, they transacted in them. It was cheap. It was fast. It did everything that you kind of hoped that the Hedera network would do. So we've experimented on other chains as well. No problems on any of them. But in this case, they went for Hedera.
All right, that's awesome. So the next thing I want to kind of touch on is, where you are in your roadmap as far as using these kind of assets as collateral. Is this more of a test, or is all of the infrastructure in place for this initiative to continue and leverage and scale?
I mean, it is the first iteration, but we're using it in Ango. It wasn't just used for a one-off transaction and everyone's put it in the bin. There's a curiosity on all sides to try and make this work. So, from the outset, the counterparties were saying, look, we don't want this to be another wireframe POC we announce and then doesn't change anything internally. They actually have objectives to meet, to develop things that are actually useful. So we've created an iteration. It's pretty good, but it's not perfect, and we're gradually going to integrate it into more of our systems to obviously make that as straight through as possible, so that when they send us a margin call, it pretty much automatically takes place. Whereas at the moment, there's bits and pieces in the middle that just need some work.
So I know this is going to take some guesswork, but how do you expect this to scale in the months and years to come?
So if we just go to both ends of that spectrum, I mean, save for a new technology coming along that replaces blockchain, at some point in the next 10 years, I think DLT blockchain technology will be used for every collateral transaction. I mean, it just makes sense that, we moved a high value of assets for probably less than a cent in a heartbeat, and you can do it 24/7, right? That doesn't exist anywhere else. So there are billions, if not trillions, of assets that are going to be transacted in this way in the coming years. In the short term, I expect what we'll see that I wouldn't say it's not commercially viable, but won't be as short-term commercially viable. So the people that get interested in it will be those that see the long-term vision and say, you know what, we need to adopt this early. So in Nest, we reached out to actually about 15, 20 institutions, something like that. They all wanted to take part. Some of them have been involved, some of them not so much, but I'm sure a lot of them now will be going, okay, let's see what we can do next. So, at one end of this extreme, you've got now you've got this kind of, let's call it initial transaction. In the future, you've got every transaction, and we're going to start walking along that curve. I reckon that in the next year, we'll definitely see double-digit millions of dollars go across the network, and hopefully it will scale more exponentially beyond that.
Very exciting. So, it only makes sense that first you tokenize these assets. And as you mentioned, that's been in place for a few years through ArchAx. Now you're using these assets for collateral. What do you think the next step is? What are the next low-hanging fruit you're looking at for ArchAx?
It's all use cases, to be honest with you. We're quite interesting in that we do, both crypto and securities. So I kind of have two areas that interest me really. So the interplay between cryptocurrencies and securities, I think, is a fascinating one. So, just at a simple level, being able to buy Bitcoin with tokenized money market funds, rather than holding stable coins, earning yields right up until the moment you want exposure to crypto. I think that's interesting. ETP products as well. I think they're coming back into the UK. That's going to be interesting. But on the security and tokenization side, I think utility of RWAs or tokenized securities, that's going to be the thing. Saying, okay, well, what can I use it for? So we've got the collateral network now. That's great. We're going to be doing an announcement in about a month's time of another form of distributing asset that we're kind of working on. That's going to be pretty interesting. And then we're going to start to look at the traditional finance world and say what would be interesting to bring over to this world. So one of the things people talk about at the moment, 24/7 interplay between stable coins and money market funds. How can I send my money market fund in and get a stable coin back 24/7? rather than having to wait for the asset manager to process my redemption and receive money in my bank. Getting over some of these inefficiencies, they're the sorts of things that a lot of the people we're talking to about are interested in.
Well, one of the things that I love about ArchAx is guys don't just talk about this, you actually make it come to fruition, so we appreciate that. Now, you started there in the UK, but the last time we talked, you were talking about moving into the United States. I know you've taken the first few steps, but how are things going as far as ArchAx going international?
Yeah, so we bought a broker dealer in Europe last November, was it, or something like that? That's been going through change of control. We think we're nearly there. We hope we're nearly there. So we're going to have a presence in Spain and Europe pretty soon. We've already got the team there on the ground. In the US, we've got a broker dealer going through. Again, we have someone on the ground there. The US is a big place, right? It's got a lot of people in the space already, but it doesn't feel like it's a market that you can miss out on. So we just need to be there. But you need a lot of firepower to be operating in the UK, Europe, and the US. So we need to do some further fundraising of our own, keep pushing on all fronts, and start to move the team out. But we definitely, we've been doing it a long time. There's a lot of people moving to this space now, but we've got 7 years of tech, reg, knowledge, relationships that hopefully we're going to be able to leverage on.
Yeah, you're absolutely the tip of the spear here. We appreciate how much you've done on Hedera to this point. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on before we let you go?
So I guess look, it's an interesting time to be in the space. These spaces are converging. I think that there's a traditional world of regulated assets, lots of money, super inefficient, and then there's a digital world, super efficient, early stages, more dynamic, and those two worlds are converging. So what you're going to get is more money, more institutions, all being done more efficiently. So this kind of future world where these two places collide is going to be bigger than most people think. So I think those people, we're still super early. Those people that get in now and develop their knowledge are going to be in a very strong position in the next few years' time.
I couldn't agree more, Graham. Congratulations on everything that you've done to this point, but it seems like this is just the beginning. Again, thank you so much for building on Hedera, and good luck.
Thanks so much for your support. Appreciate it.
So, of course, enabled by ArchAx, but names like Lloyd's and Aberdeen are going to catch the attention of these new investors that are rolling in. So I'm excited to see what happens in the months to come. Now, as I mentioned, I've been crazy busy this week, and I want to dive into some of the things that I've had going on. First, we've been wrapping up the ads of Hedera builders for the Karate Combat events coming up tonight and tomorrow night. We ran into some production issues early this week, but we've gotten all those worked out. Just as a refresher for anyone that hasn't participated in Karate Combat Up-Only Gaming, after getting some karate tokens and sending them to the Karate Combat app, you pick the fighters you think are going to win. If they win, you get more tokens. If you lose, you don't lose anything. But the question is, how do we make that happen? With the sponsors providing the largest prize pool in Karate Combat history this weekend, we're proving this concept can be sustainable without inflation. I'm really proud of the ads we produced, and I hope everybody enjoys them. And actually, a couple of my projects are involved this time around. One of them is the Bullbarians, my NFT project that I use to support this channel. I use it as kind of a Web3 Patreon, allowing holders to get early access to my content in the token-gated Galaxy-powered HBAR Bull world. If you've gotten some entertainment or education out of my content over the past several years, I'd really appreciate your support by picking one of these up. There's a live mint on Kabila for Series 2 going on right now. So like last time, the price is 400 HBAR, but there are less this time around, with only 225, bringing the total to 500. The art in this series has turned out fantastic. Like the first time around, there's a king and queen in this series. The Season 1 queen went for 8,000 HBAR on secondary a couple months ago, and the Bullbarian market in general has held up really well. The floor price on Centex is currently at 420 HBAR and 450 on Kabila, with only a few anywhere near the initial mint price. There's actually a third ultra rare like the King and Queen in this mint, but I'll let you guys figure out what makes this one special. There's a third of the mint already sold out, and all three of the rare ones are still sitting in that pool. So I wanted to explain some of the reasons why we decided to do this second mint now. One of the reasons is because we had that ad coming out in Karate Combat, and I wanted to make sure that there were plenty available for anybody that might get interested through that additional exposure. And with only a few reasonably priced ones on Kabila and Centex, I wanted to get a few more out there. I also wanted to get a few out there so I could get some more people in the HBAR bull world, expand that community a little bit. The artist that's involved with this, it takes some time. Some people wonder why it's at 400 HBAR. And, initially when I first started this, I had no other income coming in. We were trying to figure out ways that I could continue with these weekly updates and so forth. And again, no other income coming in. That was one of the reasons we put it at a reasonable price. But it actually takes the artist a fair amount of time to create each one of these. It's not like an auto-generate or anything like that. He does leverage, the latest tools out there with AI and everything else, but he customizes every single one. So it takes him a fair amount of time. He's doing it pretty much volunteering to help me out. Now, granted, 10% does go to him. He wouldn't accept any more than that, but obviously he's very talented, and it took him several weeks to put all of these together. So they have to be appropriately priced for that reason. Now, one of the things I get, since I help a lot of different teams in the space, they wonder how they can support me. And instead of, accepting tokens from them or some kind of payment, I can say, hey, just pick up a Bullbarian, you get some value for it. It's been an absolute blast of a ride to this point. I want to try to continue to bring value for that HBAR bull world and other ways I can bring value to these NFTs. So everybody that's jumped in and grabbed one of these, the support is absolutely appreciated. Now, since that time when I was initially planning that first mint, I've gotten a couple contracts. So, and I have potentially another one that's coming up. Now, the first two contracts that I got didn't quite cover what I used to be making at the HBAR Foundation. With this potential third contract, I would actually get to that point where I'm making maybe even a little bit more than I was making at the time. So, this might be the last mint for a while. I'm not going to make these mints just for no reason. I am getting the support from that artist. It takes him a lot of time. So these might actually get a lot more rare. We did put a max supply of 5,000, but I foresee, as long as things keep going the way they're going, that it's going to stay at 500 for a while. But you never know what's going to happen. Again, the max supply is 5,000 over time. There's only 500 right now. I seriously doubt we'll ever get to 5,000, but it is possible. So the next one I want to jump into is something that you might not usually think of when you think of Hedera. The second Karate Combat sponsor that I'm involved with is the all-new HBAR Wine, and I love the story about how this came about. It's actually similar to the Bullbarians in that way. With the Bullbarians, the Kabila team suggested I should help support my content with an NFT collection. And through that, I help support their business, the Bullbarian artist, Centex, and Galaxy. I love leveraging several different teams in the space. Well, in the case of HBAR Wine, I got a call from one of the Earthlings team members, Joe, and he was telling me about his trip to California wine country. He went on and on about this one vineyard, Christopher Creek, and how it was the highlight of his trip. As you'd expect, he had dozens of samples in one of the greatest wine regions of the world. Still, Christopher Creek stood out as the best wine he had ever had. He wanted to find a way of tokenizing it. Now, I know dealing with alcohol, this was not going to be an easy task, so I suggested doing it through Cask Capital. And after a few calls between Christopher Creek and Cask, it was a go. There's both a red blend and a Chardonnay in the collection. I sampled both of them. They're both fantastic, and like Joe, the red is the best I've ever had. As you can see, the HBAR labels turned out great. You can't buy this actual wine in retail stores, but we're selling at a discount to comparable Christopher Creek wines. That's $55 for the white and $45 for the red, with progressively steeper discounts for cases of 3, 6, and 12. And of course, following Cask Capital's vision, all of these are tokenized on Hedera. And a nice perk, considering HBAR is going up in value, you can buy these in HBAR. If it sells out, we're planning on rolling these proceeds into grapes that are still on the vine and follow it all the way through the process, about 18 months of which is going to be in the cask that will be branded with an HBAR Wine symbol. So if we get to that point, we're going to take plenty of pictures during that entire process and try to incorporate all of that into the tokens that eventually get sold to the consumers. Now, the point of all of this is why be involved with this space if you're not leveraging everything that's going on? It's so much fun to get involved with these different initiatives, and that's what I think all of you should do. Get involved with the projects that you're passionate about, build new things, and everything else. Make sure that you use the applications that are being launched on the Hedera network. Now we're going to shift gears a fair amount. We have a new HBAR-backed product that's coming out of Valour. Yesterday, they announced that there's a new HBAR-backed ETP launching on the Swiss SIX exchange, where investors can get exposure not just to the HBAR, but to the network's staking rewards as well. Here's what the head of Nordics at Valour said. Launching on SIX is a major milestone in our mission to democratize access to digital assets. Switzerland is one of the most forward-looking markets for regulated crypto products, and we're proud to offer investors here access to yield-bearing products like HBAR and ICP in a simple and compliant format. Elaine, the head of product at Valour, added, our debut on the SIX Swiss exchange reflects growing institutional and retail appetite for digital asset products that generate yield. These ETPs not only give investors exposure to two high-quality blockchain ecosystems, they do so through structures designed for security, simplicity, and accessibility. So the US ETFs coming out of Canary Capital and Grayscale in the months to come aren't the only ones that are going to be launching. There's going to be all kinds of products continuing to get added. Now, in this case, it's to allow access to the staking rewards, but of course, there's going to be basketed products like we talked about in the past and everything else. So exciting times for sure. The next thing I want to dive into is we're continuing to see increases in USDC liquidity minted on Hedera. We've jumped up about 27% to nearly 200 million just in the past week. And also exciting, the Hedera version of USDC is now available on the centralized exchange Gate.io. Now, sticking with the traditional space, but with a twist, we have an announcement coming out from the Hedera Foundation about aisle finance. The problem they're addressing occurs when a manufacturer or supplier ships parts which are received by a massive company and an invoice is sent. But it may take weeks or even months for that cash to arrive in the supplier's account. A group of supply chain veterans and crypto evangelists saw a way to bypass the current framework, giving birth to aisle finance. It's a new unique payment network on Hedera that utilizes untapped liquidity in the crypto markets to pay suppliers instantly. The result is an on-chain credit card machine for suppliers and a three-sided market where everyone wins. Corporate buyers hold on to their cash and vendors get paid immediately. And here's the really cool part. Crypto investors who provide liquidity can earn stable yields from the predictable business of companies selling actual products to each other. For the supplier, a process that once took months of chasing bankers is now over in minutes. This is what having an on-chain credit card machine means for businesses. It's a system that replaces bureaucracy with a few clicks thanks to Aisle's vision and, of course, the Hedera network. Now, Aisle Finance is being supported by the Hedera Foundation, but the next story we're going to jump into is completely organic. Just a couple days ago, there was an announcement of a collaboration between Coti and Aureus Money to form an infrastructure platform for legally compliant, high-quality, and liquid real-world assets. And by organic, I mean the orgs had no idea this was coming. These companies built on Hedera all on their own. Through this partnership, Coti's Privacy on Demand will be into Aureus' Hedera native platform to set new standards for institutional-grade privacy in Web3. Coti's secure, compliant privacy can protect markets from front-running and MEV attacks. All this without compromising the liquidity that's on-chain. Aureus enables tokenization of traditionally illiquid real-world assets such as real estate, private equity, and other high-value holdings through a proprietary real-world bridge. Aureus transforms these assets into compliant digital securities that can exist and operate seamlessly on the Hedera network. Eve, the founder and CEO of Aureus, said, by fusing Aureus' Swiss standard of trust for RWA tokenization and sovereign identity rails with Coti's privacy-preserving infrastructure, we deliver a fourth-generation blueprint for institutional-grade finance on public ledgers, solving privacy, identity, and compliance in one integrated design. Now we have all of these small developments, and of course we had the huge news coming out of ArchAx with Lloyd's and Aberdeen, but that's not all. We're going to dive into a brand new use case from a massive company. Today, we welcome Antonio from NTT Data. Antonio, thank you so much for hopping on today.
Oh, thank you to you to inviting me. It's a very big pleasure.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. To kick this off, Antonio, can you tell us about NTT Data, its business model, how big it is, its mission, and so forth?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, NTT Data is a global innovator, and we as a company offer services that are technological services, but also business strategy services. If we want to talk about our business model, we put ourselves as a strategic end-to-end partner for our client, and we offer different kind of services. So we go from the consulting on a business or technological level to the implementation of specific solution based on the client needs. We bring projects in production. We work on different sectors, on different markets with different technology. For example, we work with blockchain, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. These are just some example of what we do. We span on different sectors. Our headquarters is based in Japan, but we work in 50 countries. At the moment, we have 200,000 employees. This is where the latest number. If we want to summarize what is NTT Data Mission, we can say that first, we work with the client first, with the idea that client first. The main mission is to accelerate the client success and also to give a positive impact on the society. And we do this through a responsible innovation.
So a true global enterprise. And from what I understand, you are in the blockchain sector, focusing on this cutting edge technology. Can you explain the solution that you're building on the Hedera network and what problems you're trying to solve?
Yeah. Well, we are building a platform that it's built on top of the Hedera network. What we do is create a solution that certifies and manages carbon credits, and give the opportunity to companies that want to join this platform to track what are their carbon emission and apply offset action also to reduce their carbon emission, so to have a sustainable behavior. We do this on Hedera because thanks to all the main characteristics that this technology provide, the immutability, the transparency, the possibility to track what happens on the data, what happens on the network. So thanks to Hedera, we are able to create an environment that is based on trust, on the integrity. And usually the lack of trust, it's a very pain point for the carbon credit markets. So we want to fill this gap, and we can do thanks to the Hedera technology.
Excellent. This is exactly what we want to hear when we have huge entities like NTT Data using the Hedera network, and especially in the refi space where Hedera is certainly getting a foothold. We certainly appreciate it. So what other teams and platforms are you working and integrating with?
Well, at the moment, we are working closely with the Ashgraph Association. We work closely with them, and they provided very, very useful support, very useful insights, and together we defined the user story that this solution must implement, the user interface, the user experience that can provide the highest possible value from this platform. So we are working closely with them. We are also doing analysis activity together because our goal is first to complete this MVP, and then to start as soon as possible a second phase in which we want to onboard companies to work with our platform to issue valuable carbon credits. We want to broaden this ecosystem to include more actors and to scale up the solution. We give the possibility to onboard companies in this platform. They can become a part of this ecosystem and provide them a lot of functionality through a user interface that we are building to be the easiest possible and the most user-friendly possible. So a company that is onboarded on our platform could define and give visibility about its ESG goal, and also give visibility about the action that they are doing to meet their goals. They can track their balance of brown token and green token. They can apply offset action to reach the carbon neutrality. They can use dashboard and reporting page also to track and give visibility about their carbon emissions. Moreover, they can list and give visibility about their sustainability projects that they are doing. So projects that comply with the certified methodology and that can issue valuable carbon credits can be listed in the platform and can have their visibility. Also, we are implementing pages for dedicated for also external stakeholders. So, for example, investors that may be interested to understand what is available today in the market, what are the most promising projects, the most promising solution. And maybe they want to have this visibility to decide to invest. So this platform can cover a different range of actors. And we think this can, by including different companies, by including different kind of projects on different methodology, can let us to grow up a very big ecosystem in a very heterogeneous way. For now, we don't know which other specific teams or other technology will be involved. We will understand at the end of this analysis, but for sure, as soon as we have the output of this research activity, we will start as soon as possible to scale up the solution, because we see a lot of value in what we are doing.
Well, once you get to the point where you are planning on coming to market, what's your vision as far as how your customers will interact with the platform?
Well, we think that there are very good possibilities to onboard new actors, because we are creating many functionality that can be useful, can be used in a very user-friendly way. And the analysis that we are doing will help us to understand the most the companies or the profiles that may be suited for this activity. So we will start to engage as soon as possible, and our vision is that as soon as we start to integrate real projects, to start to issue real valuable carbon credits, we will be able to promote better the solution, and for sure we will be able to scale up very, very fast.
What's your broad vision for where this carbon credit market is going when it comes to actually putting it on chain on networks like Hedera?
For how we implemented this platform, we are implementing in a very agnostic way. So we will be able to introduce to integrate in our platform companies that work on different kind of projects with different kind of certified methodology. So the possibility that we want to build an heterogeneous ecosystem will give the possibility to reach different kind of companies with their specific goal, and that work on specific projects with methodologies that may be different, but at the same time, maybe all of them may be valuable. So we see a potential big expansion due to this heterogeneous foundation that we are building on what we are creating.
Oh, this is exciting stuff. You've covered this pretty well already, but is there anything else you'd like to pass on before we let you go?
Well, I think this we see a lot of value in what we are doing, because we believe that sustainability is something we all should work on. So our idea is that what we hope is that what we are developing may bring. We may be able to show the value that we are generating in what we are creating, because we see that if this ecosystem, this kind of solution grow up, the impact on the society may be very positive, and we may give a very big support to our society worldwide.
Well, we can all certainly agree with that. Antonio, thank you so much for coming on today and telling us about your solution. Thanks for building on Hedera, and good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Now, like you, I was absolutely blown away when I realized how big NTT Data was. I knew that they were a big company, but I had no idea that they had 200,000 employees on the payroll. And it sounds like, from what Antonio said, they are absolutely ready to scale. Next up, we're going to shift gears into Hedera Gaming. I just had to highlight that the Hedera-powered mobile game Legends of the Past has launched their testing tournament. What really impressed me, besides the gameplay, of course, is that they're giving away $5,000 to the top 20% of players. So get out there and get yours. I do want to explain that this is just testing, so you're not going to find the Legends of the Past game directly in the App Store or Google Play. You'll have to get Test Flight or whatever the Google equivalent is, I'm not really sure, to participate in this tournament, but it's certainly worth it. There was another announcement that came out of the Hedera Foundation this week, and like Binary Holdings, which we covered a few weeks ago, it will help get Hedera apps in front of more people. Hedera to Earn could expose Hedera apps to about 24 million people and will be powered by their native HTE token. Now, I actually haven't heard of any of these, so it looks like I have some digging to do. But before we get into our last interview, I do want to dive into the World Calisthenics Organization. They're another sports league that's going to enhance the intensity of their events viewing experience with up-only gaming. I'm now putting these up-only gaming leagues into 3 categories. The first is mainly spectator sports. Karate Combat, American Sevens Football League, and Top Flight Football fall into that bucket. Next is where we have a league where the involvement is mainly through those participating in the sport itself. The Underground Bowling Association is an example where they have over 11,000 players. The World Calisthenics Organization is in the middle. They put on incredible live events with professionals doing what seems inhuman, but on the other hand, the league encourages everyone to get involved with all kinds of calisthenics challenges. This is actually what struck a chord with me, but we'll get into that in a minute. First, some information about the NFT and mint that they're going to be holding this Sunday. There's a max supply of 250 Diamond Battle of the Bars NFTs. Several of which have been already sold in the private sale, and even some of the athletes are picking these up. The private sale was the same price that you'll get on Sunday, which will initially be $200 for the next 75 sold. The private sale was the same price that you'll get on Sunday, which will initially be $200 for the next 75 sold, after which the price is going to go up to $250. Along with the NFT, you'll get 10.5 million vested Battle of the Bars tokens, a free beginner's calisthenics course valued at $200, league governance rights, VIP access to live events, and future staking on IvyFi. Now, I'm going to explain why I picked one of these up in the private sale. At first, I actually wasn't. We all can't participate in every mint, but I changed my mind when some of the WCO posts inspired me to go do some pull-ups, which I hadn't done in about a year. Now, a lot of you know working out can be addictive, and going down and getting a workout in showed me that WCO isn't just about entertainment, which, let's be honest, is pretty cool, but it's also about participation. And I actually didn't even know about all of these perks when I picked it up, so now I'm definitely happy. And for the last interview, we're going to do a deep dive into Bonzo Vaults with a familiar face. So we have a familiar face on here today with Brady, the founder of Bonzo Finance Labs, but he's going to be doing a little bit more deeper dive into some things they have going on the platform. Brady, as always, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, as always, as well. Yeah.
So we'll just dive into this, Brady. Just consider it a clean slate. That there's tons of our viewers here that know who you are, but there's a lot of people out there, obviously, who don't. So let's just start off with, what is your background? How'd you get into the space? And how'd Bonzo Finance Labs come to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So, started my career working in distributed systems that were open source. So I worked at a company called DataStax. They offered an open source database called Cassandra. I worked at a security company after that called Cloudflare, all within like a technical product marketing, open source community capacity across both. And then was reached out to by a previous boss from the first job I worked at, who had started at Hedera and was building a team out. And so, joined the Hedera team pretty early on. It was around 2018. It's right when a number of different layer one networks were launching. It was pretty clear at that time that this industry was going to be a thing. It was going to be financial infrastructure for the future. And so hopped on and worked at Hedera and the Hashgraph organization for about 5.5 years, and then left at the beginning of last year to form Bonzo Finance Labs. And we're a development shop that at this time contributes to the development of the Bonzo Finance protocol. And the Bonzo Finance protocol is an open source Aave v2 blending protocol that's been adapted to Hedera and is available on the Hedera mainnet.
Let's dive into that a little bit. What's the mission of Bonzo Finance as a protocol, of which, of course, Bonzo Finance Labs is one of the major contributors?
Yeah, so Bonzo Finance Protocol's core mission is to become the liquidity layer of Hedera. And what Bonzo Finance started with was filling a gap in the ecosystem that was very clear at the time for a need for lending and borrowing, or decentralized credit markets. So, we had liquid staking through Stater Labs. There's multiple decentralized exchanges like Saucer Swap and H Suite. And, in any functioning economy, you have to have lending and borrowing. And I view these networks through the lens of each of them are kind of their own economy. You have a national currency that exists. So for Hedera, it's like HBAR. For Ethereum, it's ETH. You have governance, and you have all of these businesses or protocols that are set up within that economy that allow people to transact and offer various services. And so decentralized lending was one that was missing. And that was sort of a wedge to be able to bring that online and make that available to the Hedera ecosystem. And it's doing well. We have around $57 million in total value locked. Significant increases recently in USDC. But to tie into sort of that overarching mission of becoming the liquidity layer of Hedera, there's more protocols and products that can be brought in under that same vision that help support liquidity initiatives across the network. And so one of the ones that we're working through right now that is going to go live within Q3 of this year is Bonzo Vaults, which is liquidity management and strategy vaults that route liquidity across the ecosystem.
Well, one of the things that I love about the concept of Web3 lending in general, it starts with collateral. So it starts with wealth compared to the traditional banking system where it starts with debt. The money comes into existence when you take that loan. This is flipping all of that on its head and starting with that collateral, starting with that wealth in the very beginning. I like that idea. It's something, as somebody who's been following, monetary history and banking history, it's just interesting for me to see how the way lending has been done throughout history is really being flipped on its head. But let's dive into those vaults a bit. Who do you think is going to be the main users and audience for those vaults?
Yeah, so we see three primary users for Bonzo Vaults. So the first category of user is going to be retail and institutional users. So users that are, they're holding liquidity. They want to be able to put that liquidity to work. They want to be able to earn yield on it. For those individuals, they can go to a vault and they can supply liquidity that they're holding of many different types of assets. Depending on what each vault offers as part of its strategy, they can supply the liquidity to that vault. And then it actively manages it and routes it to various protocols across the DeFi ecosystem. So that's the first bucket, is users that are really looking for yield and maximizing yield and being able to allow their liquidity to be managed automatically. The second group are developers. And with Bonzo Vaults, any developer who knows Solidity and views the Bonzo Vaults documentation can actually build out vault strategies that take advantage of any protocol that exists in the Hedera ecosystem. So, in many cases, there are institutions that have institutions or hedge funds, and they have like quants on board. And these institutions are trying to put their liquidity to work. And they have all of these various strategies that they use in DeFi ecosystems that have multiple steps as part of it. Instead of having to go through that manual process and active monitoring and oftentimes swapping or lending and borrowing or rebalancing liquidity within a pool, a vault can be built that automates that process for them. And not only does it support their initiatives for managing liquidity and trying to maximize yield, but as the strategist and the deployer of the vault, they actually earn a vault strategist fee for anybody who comes in and uses it. And tying that back to that first category of retail and institutional users, in this scenario, it kind of allows for institutional grade strategies made available to users who maybe aren't as sophisticated, which I think is a really great value for folks across the ecosystem. And then for the third category, we view ecosystem projects and token launches as this other group of individuals that are a persona for Vault. So let's say you are a new DeFi protocol that's launching on the Hedera network, and you've gone through like Orbit, for example, as your launch pad. When you launch this DeFi protocol, it's often that you're going to need to be able to attract more liquidity to that protocol and bootstrap that liquidity to get things going. What can be done is vaults can be created that route liquidity to this new protocol and have strategies that help to not only maximize yield from the protocol, but also you can incentivize at the vault layer itself. So new protocol launches, let's say that new protocol has a token, they can apply liquidity incentives to a vault and incentivize bootstrapping liquidity for their new protocol to kick things off.
So, Brady, you gave a really good example of what one of these vaults might look like yesterday in DeFi Corner. I'd love you to run through that again, but also go into some of the other strategies that we could see come out of these vaults.
Yeah, so I think one of the initial strategies that just makes a lot of sense as like a foundational layer is being able to do active management of liquidity within a saucer swap V2 pool. So saucer swap V2 pools are essentially Uniswap V3, which is concentrated liquidity. And if you've gone into saucer swap V2 to supply liquidity, or you have played around with Uniswap V3, there's a degree of complexity when it comes to supplying and actively managing that liquidity. So you go in and there's ranges that you set for the token pair for a specific pool. The tighter the concentration that you can get within that range, the more yield that you can earn from trading fees, but the more active management you have to do. And so what one strategy is for these vaults is to actively manage concentrated liquidity in saucer swap V2 pools. And you could launch a vault, for each of the V2 pools that exist. And it'll probably start out with just a few of them at first, but over time, the ability to add more vaults that route liquidity to these various V2 pools, is definitely on the roadmap. And what it effectively does is it's automating the balancing and trying to concentrate that liquidity to maximize yield and make it easier for users because they don't have to go in and actively manage, rebalance. They don't have a concern around liquidity being swapped. So essentially, if the price ranges change too much and you've supplied liquidity into a V2 pool, that liquidity can end up all being forced over to one of the pairs within the pool. And so these vaults try to actively prevent that from happening, maximize liquidity for users. And so all around great for the end user who's supplying liquidity. But I think it's also helpful for, the pool itself, because the more, active management that takes place for a pool, the more concentrated liquidity is, the less slippage there is for people who are trying to trade against that pool. So it creates more efficient markets for, in this case, the saucer swap V2 pools that they're connected to.
And what other strategies do you envision here? I'm sure there's going to be some other exotic things and other ways we can leverage these.
Yeah, so another strategy that we see like across the board for vault type products in other ecosystems is one that does a leveraged liquid staking yield loop. So this one utilizes decentralized lending protocols. And what it does is for assets that have a base asset and a liquid staking token, let's use HBAR and HBAR for example, because I think that's the most ubiquitous one on Hedera. It's the ability for a user to come to a vault and supply the liquid staking token into that vault. And then what the vault does in its automated management of liquidity is supplying it to a lending protocol, borrowing the base asset from the lending protocol, and then restaking the borrowed asset for a liquid staking token again. And then depending on the vault's strategy, you could loop that multiple times. And so effectively what it's doing is earning staking yield using leverage and then actively managing it based on, as the prices change between the liquid staking token and the base asset, actively managing it to ensure that there's no issues between those two.
So, Brady, of course, we have new kinds of protocols that are coming online, new tools that are coming out all the time. Is there anything else as far as strategies that you're thinking about or things that you want to tell the rest of the community?
Yeah, so going back to that developer persona, it is a permissionless protocol. There's the ability for anybody to come in who has a strategy in their mind that they want to automate and build that into a vault and have that approved and then deployed to make available for anybody. So, one of the things that we're actively trying to do is, as documentation rolls out for this product, is being able to enable developers to take the strategies that they have and get creative with it and be able to build those as a vault and have that deployed for the ecosystem. And there's a number of different rankings and categories that are applied to vaults. So when you go into a vault, it'll tell you like which protocols are involved, which assets are involved, a safety score. There's an audit requirement for the vault as well in order to get it approved. So there's a number of things that help users determine whether a strategy or a specific vault is maybe the right thing or the wrong thing for them.
And of course, with AI, the line between just regular community members, people, degens, and those developers is going to blur all the time. So people are going to be able to get more and more involved and really tailor some of these vaults to exactly what they want to do. So how do you see this impacting the broader DeFi ecosystem?
Yeah, so one thing that this we believe is going to do when it goes live is contribute to overall TVL on Hedera. When you look at TVL across other DeFi ecosystems and networks in the space, it's often that, for better or worse, that TVL can be double counted in different ways. So oftentimes funds that are borrowed from maybe a lending protocol end up being supplied to a decentralized exchange. And when you think about the funds that are locked in both of those protocols, it's often the same liquidity, but it's counted as multiple times. And I think that's one of the ways that when you look at TVL metrics for different ecosystems that you see much larger amounts. And Hedera's DeFi ecosystem is starting to evolve. And as more protocols come online, we'll start to see some of that same type of activity. Ultimately, I think DeFi Llama should be able to do various things to determine whether or not some of this liquidity is double counted and figure out ways of normalizing it across the space. But because that is the game that's being played, I think it's good that Hedera is starting to play that game as well. And so how I see it is, as liquidity is supplied to vaults, that counts as TVL. And then as it's routed and actively managed in other protocols across the ecosystem, that's additional TVL as well. So overall TVL, I think, is a great thing. The second thing is benefits to just the broad DeFi ecosystem. The fact that these vaults do route liquidity to other protocols across the ecosystem opens up this opportunity, to be able to grow liquidity and bootstrap these various DeFi projects. And back to our first talking point, especially new DeFi protocols. I'm hoping that we start to see some new ones come online that have additional functionalities that we haven't had available before in the ecosystem.
The other thing that I'm excited about is, that over time we're going to shift from, all the stuff that's happening in the DeGen space, all of the native Web3 stuff into more traditional assets. And having this infrastructure like the vault is going to be invaluable for all of the strategies that we want to deploy in that traditional financial system. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think as we start to get into RWAs more, or maybe tokenized equities, I think as long as the path that's taken on that is that there's still a permissionless nature to them, I could see vaults and a lot of the protocols that we have in DeFi on Hedera and other networks being used for some of these real world assets that are starting to come online. And at the very least, I think stablecoin liquidity is a big one. Being able to maybe bridge between the two worlds, if there is a crypto DeFi world and a real world assets world. Stablecoins do kind of act as like a thread between those two in many ways. And so being able to access liquidity of crypto assets with stablecoins that can then be brought into platforms that allow you access into tokenized equities, real world assets, things of that nature. I see that as a thread, and this definitely would help support that.
Well covered. Now, let's talk about timeline a little bit. When are these vaults going to be available, and what else do people need to know about them?
Yeah, so vaults should be ready within Q3 of this year. And, there's going to be additional blog postings that come out on the Bonzo Finance Labs blog, threads related to better understanding, how vaults actually work with diagrams and, visuals to be able to get an inside look at what that looks like. And then, for developers, documentation. So trying to get docs out there to get folks tinkering and building, or at the very least, just learning and understanding how vaults work and how maybe when they do go live, developers can jump in and start to build strategies and get those deployed.
Well, exciting stuff. Brady, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to touch on?
Just generally excited for the DeFi ecosystem in general on Hedera. I feel like there's been so much momentum and movement. We've got new protocols that are coming online this year. There's Bonzo Vaults obviously is going to be big, and just excited in general. It's an exciting time for Hedera for sure.
There's no question about that. The markets are heating up. It's a perfect time to be launching new products like this. Brady, congratulations on all the success you've had so far with Bonzo Finance, and I can't wait to get these vaults out.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
So the DeFi ecosystem is definitely pointing in the right direction. I'm looking forward to those vaults coming out. I will say that I'm getting down to my deadline here, so I'm going to skip most of the network analysis. I will say that revenue is up significantly this week because of all the trading taking place within that DeFi space, and also the transaction volume is up slightly. But I'm sure everybody doesn't want me to skip what's going on in the HBAR market. Altcoins had a great week, mainly driven by the Genius crypto bill passing both the House and Senate and being signed into law by President Trump just today. This is finally giving us what we've been begging for years, regulatory clarity in the United States. Initially, I was a little bit shocked because Bitcoin was down a little bit this week, but it actually makes sense. Bitcoin was already pretty much in the clear as far as its place in the regulatory picture as a store of value, but it really was the altcoins that needed that additional clarity. So ETH and XRP both clocked 20% gains this week. Solana was up 8%. HBAR, on the other hand, has managed an impressive 34% gain, and at the time of recording is just below 27 cents. We managed to get up to about 30 cents yesterday, but now we're seeing what I think is a healthy pullback. We've seen between 28 and 30 cents be a really important range for Hedera going all the way back to 2021. This 28 to 30 cent range is the same area where we peaked out at back in March. We really need to get above 30 cents and hold to look forward to the next leg up. That said, no matter how you look at it, we had a great week. Between the continued adoption by enterprise, a nice movement on the retail front, and the ETFs coming, I honestly think this fall will be HBAR's time to shine. Now, looking forward to next week, I do want to say that I have some prior obligations, so I'm not going to be able to do a full weekly update, but you'll notice that we didn't have Shark Bites in this episode. So next week, we're going to get Rob back. We're going to do a nice long Shark Bites, and we're going to post that during the normal time for the weekly update. Everybody, make sure you check out the fights tonight. Let me know what you think of those ecosystem ads that we see. It's going to be an absolute blast. We'll see you in a couple weeks.